Now, in 1986, I had a series of dreams and visions and all kinds of coinky dinky things that were happening, and I knew that something very important was up. And I talked about it with Victor and Cora, and they both said that they had felt it too. And it wasn't long before Victor said, "You will go and consult with the gods for me, and also have a great adventure, which is part of your training." And I said, "Really? How? What's going to happen?" And he said, "You're going to go to Hawaii." And I laughed and I said, "Well, I don't even see how that could be possible." And he said, "The gods are arranging it." And sure enough, that evening, I get a phone call from an old friend of mine that I hadn't seen in quite a few years. And she said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Hawaii. Are you going to want to come along?" And I said, "Oh my God, I would love to." I said, "Whatever made you think of me?" And she said, "Well, you usually don't have a whole hell of a lot of money, but you're always good for a good time and a good adventure. And that's what I want this to be. I want it to be part vacation and part adventure with magical and interesting things happening. So that means that you've got to come along." And I said, "Well, Victor will be very pleased to hear that." So this book, again with the wonderful illustration of Peter Hollinghurst, there we go, is all about that adventure. And I wrote about it, a shorter version, in a magazine. It was a small fairy community magazine called Witch Eye, and I wrote it as a short series, and then I let it alone because Victor said that I needed to wait for the timing to be right and then to tell the whole story. And this is how it came about, because it became very clear to me when I had to write it and make sure that it was out when it came out. And so I worked very hard to make that happen, and so did many others. Very thankful to my publisher, Storm Constantine, and others who helped this project come to life. And like the other books, there are interesting and humorous stories, but there's also the nature of the quest. And the quest did mean something that was very important, and it also was the forerunner of what later became the a movement, you could say, in a way. And we are now at another cycle. We are at the end of our cycle, and we're at a very, very important moment in history. And that's what this is about. But in the meantime, I will read you one of the stories that were here, one of the humorous ones. This part is called The Road to Uli. In Hawaii, one has only to drive a few miles and the terrain can completely change. We were now on an intense, winding road, and it seemed that the vegetation became thicker and lusher with every turn. The air felt heavy with the smells of damp earth, dripping greenery, and the exploding of color and scents, some exotic and rare. There was a little traffic, but what we did see was mostly local. We determined this from the confident speed of the vehicles zooming past us. So as to not miss any local flavor, we pulled over and paused next to a beautiful statue of the Virgin Mary, set up on an altar of rocks at a sharp curve. She was covered with fresh flower leis and had fruit and candle offerings at her feet. I guess this is some kind of dead man's curve, offered Linda. Could be, I replied, but remember that to many Hawaiians, the Virgin Mary is another way of portraying their Hawaiian mother goddess, Uli. Even though some may think of her as a goddess of dark magic, Victor said that this is misunderstood, just like death. Death and darkness are no more evil than the night sky or the darkness of the womb. And he told me that this is how it is also with the Mexican goddess Tonantzin. She's now the Virgin Mary of Guadalupe. We got back into the car, and I added, "It looks though like we're heading in the right direction." We were now long past the little town, and were now far away from anything resembling anything modern. We were gliding through the beautiful landscape, occasionally a break in the jungle that would expose bright rolling green fields with fat, happy cattle. Our car became like a panning camera, sweeping from one scene to the next through the twists and curves of the road. We finally popped into a clearing, and there, in a pull-off by the road, sat a sheriff's car. The sheriff himself was over at another car, looking with and talking with elderly tourists. He was waving instructions for them in a friendly manner, and something about him struck me, so I pulled over and stopped. "Why are we sitting here?" inquired Linda. "I'm going to ask the sheriff some questions," I answered. "Well, if that's the case, I'm going to take my big old hunting knife here and discreetly shove it into the glove compartment," drawled Linda. I nodded with approval. "I see. You're finally taking my advice on not terrifying the locals." Before Linda could answer, the sheriff noticed us. He waved the people in the other car on their way and came over to where we had stopped. I greeted him first. Even though much of his face was hidden behind big aviator glasses, I saw that he was a handsome Hawaiian man. "And aloha to you." He leaned on the passenger window and glanced us over in a friendly, professional manner. "And what can I do for you young ladies?" "Aloha," I answered. "We're looking for these pools that we've heard of that are sacred." The sheriff nodded and smiled. "Yes, just keep right on going. They're about another half-mile down the road. There's also a campsite nearby. Don't drive too fast or you'll miss it," he cautioned. I continued, "Since they are sacred, I'd like to know if there's anything in local custom that we should do or not do, as the case may be." His eyebrows arched over the aviator glasses. "In all my years here, I have never heard of a mainlander asking such a thing." "Well," I responded, "to our way of thinking, it only makes sense that if you're wandering in one country or another and you're friendly and polite to the local people, it should only follow that you should do the same with the local gods. Just seems like the polite kind of right thing to do." The sheriff seemed frozen and did not move for what seemed like a long moment. He then said slowly, "It's very nice of you to be so considerate, but we have local people that take care of the thoughtless sins of the tourists. If you really wish to greet one of our gods, Pele is very open to visitors." "Been there, done that," interjected Linda matter-of-factly. "I think Pele likes us, and we're now here to speak to her sister Uli, and she," Linda continued, pointing at me, "she needs to find a kahuna." Linda grinned up to the sheriff. "I thought I'd just cut to the chase, 'cause I'm starving, and I want to find some meat." The sheriff bowed his head for a second. "Now, you guys wouldn't be pulling my leg or belong to some wacky cult." "No, of course not," I replied, trying to sound self-assured. "Not any more so than the Hawaiian faith is some wacky, old-fashioned pagan religion." "True, true," the sheriff nodded. "You got me there." His grin was still in place. "Are you ladies going to be camping overnight out here?" Yes, most likely that's what we're going to do, I said, trying to muster up my friendliest tone, while in the back of my mind I had visions of Hawaiian cops hiding in the bushes with binoculars focused on us. I looked over on the dash and I said, um, then I said, let me see if I can help you find a nice little spot. Do you have a map? He asked. I looked over at the dash and I said, oh, it's in the glove compartment, cheerily. And I reached over to it when Linda caught my eye and it hit me. The oh shit look must have been plain on my face because the sheriff's grin widened and, in the most casual, friendly tone that you can imagine, said, oh, please, let me help, and flipped open the glove compartment, and with a metallic clunk, out popped Linda's 10-inch hunting knife in all its glory, since she was wearing the sheath. One eyebrow arched over the aviator glasses. It's a hunting knife, stated Linda. Brought it along 'cause it's useful and because we're girls and, women, protection, you know. I see, said the sheriff, he eyeing the knife quietly for a few moments, considering. He continued with, that's a mighty big old knife. I mean, you could kill a bear with that thing. Maybe you didn't know that we don't have bears in Hawaii. He looked briefly at me and back at Linda. So who does the knife belong to? Linda raised her hand. Now why does this not surprise me? Young lady, are you familiar with laws regarding concealed weapons? Ah, now, officer, the only person I was trying to conceal this from was from some stupid kid trying to rip it off. I really do use it. Those little ridges there are for gutting fish, and with the other edge I pop clams. I wasn't even planning on sacrificing any chickens with it. I felt my head softly hit the steering wheel. Wrong islands, different culture, Linda, I said dryly. The grin seemed eternally plastered on the sheriff's face. Well, you would be well prepared nonetheless. Look, Sheriff, I said a little bit exasperately, she really does know how to use it properly. And we're originally from Michigan, and there's a lot of hunting out there, fish and ducks and deer, and yes, bear, but you've never skinned a bear, have you, Linda? Dearly hoping that she would have the good sense to say no if she did. Nah, I helped skin a deer once, but never a bear. She patted her tummy. Like I said, I'm getting hungry, and I wouldn't mind hunting down some wild pig, though. Now I'd like to see that, said the sheriff, showing more teeth. I've hunted wild goat and pig out here myself. It's really rough terrain, and pigs fight back. You see, by our custom, it's the men that do the hunting. He straightened up and he stretched a little. Young lady, why don't you get out of the car and show me your license and open the trunk? What? Exclaimed Linda. You don't believe what she said? And you're not even asking her for her license, and she's the driver. Oh, I believe her just fine. You're the one with the oversized toothpick. Now open the trunk, said the sheriff kindly. Linda, with no more ado, got out of the car and opened the trunk while the sheriff studied her license. So you really are from Michigan, he teased, looking us over. Linda squirmed between being amused and disgusted. Well, of course we are, only she said, pointing at me, now lives in California. Ah, well, good friends on a trip together. So why don't you take that sheath off your belt, put the nice hunting knife in it, and then put the knife in the sheath into whatever bag holds your camping equipment, and put it back in the trunk, he instructed. Yes, sir, said Linda, relenting as she bounded to her task. The sheriff came around to my side of the car and leaned into the window, taking off his sunglasses and looking deep into my eyes. His eyes were dark golden pools that said that this sheriff takes his work very seriously, and he was not a man to be trifled with. Nevertheless, the eyes still expressed amusement. Now, what is this about a kahuna? He asked more seriously. and for the first time the grin relaxed a little in his face. I explained my role in this adventure. You see, I'm supposed to find kahunas that tell the oldest stories, and I've been sent on this quest by my teacher, Victor Anderson, who is also a kahuna but lives in California. He told me a true kahuna would recognize his name, and that would be all the introduction I would need. We really have paid our respects to Pele. We even gave her a proper lei. Oh, really? What kind of lei was that? The sheriff asked. One with green leaves that was made especially for us by this young woman's auntie, who we were told is a kahuna, and she informed her niece that she knew that we were coming, and she was already making the lei for us. She also knew Victor's name. When was this? The sheriff inquired. Just yesterday, I said, right before that little earthquake that they had up at the crater. The sheriff straightened up, nodding to himself, then leaned towards me again, and he advised, I think Auntie B will be the one to help you. She would also enjoy speaking with you, I think. The grin was now back at the sheriff's place, and he gave more detailed information and instructions as to where to camp. After you set up, keep going down this road. She's on the left-hand side in one of the few private houses that are here. If you see a bunch of road equipment by a wall, then you've gone too far. Turn around. Come back. And if you can't find it, then it's not meant to be. If you do, you'll be let in. Just go up to the door, tell her I sent you. Have a nice evening. And if you need any more help, just ask any local where Henry is, and I'll be right there. We drove off, and I looked at the sky and could still feel the late mid-afternoon sun on my face. Even though we started our day quite early in the morning, it seemed like time moved slower here, because I thought it really should be later in the day. So much has happened already. Little did I know that my day had only just begun. We found the entrance to the pools, and the campsite was tucked away just where he told us it would be. I don't want to set up the campsite in the open, said Linda. I feel a shift in the weather coming. So we drove a little farther back into the park, out of the way. I looked up at the sky, and indeed there were dark gray clouds in the distance. I think you're right, I said. You need to go and find that kahuna woman while I set up camp. Really? That leaves you doing all the work. Are you sure? I'll be as happy as a clam, and even more so if you find me some meat to roast. And with that, Linda started unloading the car. When satisfied that she had all she needed, she wished me happy kahuna hunting, and as I drove off, she shouted, "And don't forget the meat!" The last thing I think that needs to be said or can be said is that this is a time to really take full advantage of everything that is before us right now. Full advantage of our education, of our ability to access information by computer, by our libraries, by the elders that are available and willing to speak, by our own exploration and our willingness to look within as well as without. Because it's by doing these things that we will have the power to unify in all the various ways that we need to in order to raise our consciousness and in order to help make this world a better place, not just for ourselves and our children, but to be fully aware of the consciousness of the earth itself and everything that is living upon it, and everything that is conscious and aware in our whole solar system, in our whole universe. And once we believe this, once we fully understand it, then truly all of the ridiculous, horrible things that we see around us now, they will become as nothing. They will be seen for the trite and malaise that they are. And it will no longer have such power over us. And this can only happen if we believe in ourselves. And that is part of what this whole adventure is. And a part of what religion is developing the relationship with your inner soul and to come to understand who you really are and what you're connected to. And you can practice this in almost any religious faith, as long as it is a sincere one and an honest one, and that believes in humanity moving forward. And as Victor said many times, yes, in the past there were wonderful things. And yes, there are things from ancient people and tribal people from the past and even today where we can learn a lot. But we have to also give honor to what we have learned and what we are now, and to take the best of those things and make it applicable for the future. You know, trying to go back is not the answer. Stubbornly trying to maintain the status quo is not the answer. It's moving forward in grace and in beauty. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for allowing me to speak with you. Aloha.